Welcome, everyone. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We have amazing guests, Tom and Paige from Shareable, here to talk a little bit about their work. Hopefully, you've kind of read the emails that you've gotten and got a little bit of background. But yeah, I'm just going to hand the floor over to them for about the first 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll have the rest of the hour for everybody's questions and curiosities. So write things down as they go so we can have a nice, lovely, productive question session after. Tom and Paige, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Tom Llewellyn. I am the program director at Shareable, based in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I'm joined by Paige. You want to introduce yourself?
Hey y'all, I'm Paige. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the communications manager at Shareable. Excited to be here. Thank you.
Paige is out in New York, so
Yeah.
joining us in the evening. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. Um, Show of hands, or let's say show of elbows. How many people have been on Shareable's website before? Let's see some elbows. Got a few elbows coming in. All right. Kim's just shaking the head, shaking the head. Um, well, Shareable has been around for going on 17 years now, and we were initially founded to kind of be the mouthpiece, the to beat the drum for the sharing economy. And then kind of over time, we shifted to becoming a lot more critical of what the sharing, quote unquote, sharing economy was becoming, and then also started presenting alternatives. And so to date, we've published about 4,500 stories about the ways that people are sharing resources around the world. We have over 300 how-to guides. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. Um, Done films. We've got a couple of podcast series. And we've now, in the last couple of years, made this intentional shift to focusing a lot more on the kind of action part and stepping away from kind of the education and communications a bit. So moving from that inspiration to action. And that has manifested itself in a number of kind of core programs for Shareable. We've supported groups to set up emergency battery networks around the United States. We've done a lot of work around kind of different mutual aid initiatives. We've got a whole program focused on rural electric cooperatives. And a few years ago, we were successful as part of a larger national coalition. We played a major role in. We were successful at getting $11 billion in the Inflation Reduction Act for new renewable energy projects, coast to coast, for electric co-ops, leveraging a kind of 3-to-1 federal investment. So the co-ops were putting forward 25% of the project costs, and federal government was putting forward, excuse me, the other way around. Co-ops were putting up three-quarters, federal government putting up one-quarter. So that $11 billion investment is actually creating a $44 billion investment in new renewable energy for rural communities, supporting a just transition. So that's a little bit about the work that we do. And in recent, the last couple of years, as part of that shift, we have been spending a lot more of our energy towards libraries of things. And so we've been working, thank you, Paige. We've been working to start, create libraries of things. Libraries of things have been around for, informally for a very long time. Formally, the longest running library of things in the world is at the Berkeley Public Library. It started independently in 1979 and early 90s. It became part of the public library system and now has thousands of tools and is open to anybody for the city of Berkeley. City of Oakland also a few years later in the 90s, launched a similar one. And there are now over 2,000 libraries of things around the world. And so we have been working with communities to start them in a kind of a lot of different areas. And one of the things there's kind of five major things that we feel like libraries of things and kind of other shared resource infrastructure can help address. So the first one is household financial fragility and kind of equitable access. It's a lot easier for people to get access to a lot of things when they're shared, as opposed to having to buy all those things themselves. And the last couple of years, we worked with a group down in Houston, Texas, that integrated a library of things into a new affordable housing development that was kind of specifically geared towards kind of immigrants and newcomers into that part of the community. It's called the Connect High Star one, and we're now modeling off of that to run a whole kind of training series specifically for kind of housing developers or community developers that are working with housing developers, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a minute. Another major part of libraries of things are kind of economic opportunity and small business development. So I mentioned the Oakland Tool Library. They've got, when I interviewed them a few years ago before co-founding the Asheville Tool Library in North Carolina, they had 25 weed whackers in Oakland. They had 15 hedge trimmers. I can't remember how many hammers and drills and all this whole thing. And they said that there was a lot of people that were getting into the trades businesses, doing lawn care, handy support, that didn't have the finances to be able to invest all their tools up front. So instead, they were utilizing the public library, the Library of Things in Oakland, to kind of build out their businesses, and then over time, as they had built up the capital, acquire the tools they needed on a very regular basis that made it harder to get them from the public library. So that's another piece, and there's a number of different aspects of that kind of economic development as well. Another piece is the sustainability and waste reduction. So it's been estimated that the average power drill in the United States gets used for only about 15 minutes in its entire lifetime, its whole life cycle. And you think about, all the minerals that were mined, the oil that was pumped, the plastic that was produced, 70 to 90% of waste occurs during the production process that we never even see as consumers. The shipping, the use, the battery disposal, which often isn't done correctly, all for that 15 minutes of using that item, right? So we've been working with a number of groups that are tracking that kind of environmental impact, and there's some really great reporting coming out, and there's a few of the kind of base platforms for libraries of things. My Turn being one of them that we work with very closely. They're now integrating that research into their platforms so that anybody that's starting a library of things can track the environmental impact in their communities that they're having, through lending. We also work with the Center for Biological Diversity, which is looking into the habit preservation that occurs as a result of libraries of things and reducing consumption. Emergency preparedness and climate resilience. So a year and a half ago, Hurricane Helene came through Asheville, North Carolina, and some of the most impactful responders were kind of this consortium of the Asheville Tool Library, Western North Carolina Repair Cafe, and the mutual aid disaster relief, that all work together and kind of show the power that these kind of communal infrastructure can have. They leveraged their 1,800 members to be able to support other people in the community. They became this amazing mutual aid hub. And so there's a lot of kind of secondary services that can be provided. And then, community cohesion and social infrastructure, right? Like they can become third spaces. They're community centers where people are coming together, countering isolation and strengthening those networks of mutual aid and care within our communities. So by shifting from isolated ownership to shared infrastructure, libraries of things help communities become more affordable, economically vibrant, sustainable, connected, resilient, and often with lower startup costs than many traditional kind of other community development practices might have. So that's a little bit of the background on what libraries of things are and some of the many reasons about why we're investing a lot of our time as an organization into them. And that's in order to be able to scale on a large, as opposed to like one project at a time, trying to kind of grow this national and international movement, we've been working on the tools to accomplish that. So Paige is going to talk a little bit more about some of our kind of one of the big publications we just put out.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Tom. So yeah, as part of our focus on sorry for the scrolling, the Library of Things, we just published 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, the second edition of the Library of Things Toolkit, which is a free resource that's about 250 pages long. Yes, that's the original, that's 1.0 version. We're very excited for a new print version coming soon. So this is a very comprehensive resource for starting and expanding a library of things. It's based off the Library of Things collab, which Shareable started in 2024. That has been continuing on in partnership with the Tool Library Alliance, and I can drop their link later. Um, so the first edition was downloaded by folks and organizers in over 50 countries, and the digital version even more. And we kind of felt compelled to expand upon the first version based on the feedback and positive response we got. Originally, it was just going to be adding the info from the subsequent the collab sessions that didn't make it into the first version because it happened after. But then we completely reimagined it, which was exciting, but a lot of work. But so we're really excited that it's fully like reimagined and expanded. Let me go to the toolkit is we want one thing we emphasize at Shareable is our free resources. So it's completely free on our website. We have there's an HTML version that you can just view on our website. And the sections break down in here. And then we also have a free PDF version you can download as well. And then this toolkit is a standalone resource based the written toolkit to create an LOT. But if you prefer visual learning or video, it also is a self-paced course on YouTube based off the collab sessions. And these are all broken down into chapters, so it's easy to navigate, and you don't have to like commit to an hour and a half video. You can kind of navigate it based on the chapters. And so for the 1.0 version, we heard that a lot of folks were just printing it themselves, like Tom did, but even like just printed it out. So, which was fine and it worked well enough, but it kind of inspired us to create a printed version of the toolkit. So that's coming soon, later this spring. So it's going to be available like to buy as a physical book and designed as a book if you don't want to be like looking on it on a computer. And I think one thing that's really exciting about this toolkit is that it is obviously comprehensive and designed for you to start in the Library of Things, but there's a lot of great information in there for anyone doing any kind of organizing work or project, especially around mutual aid and collective resilience, which Tom kind of touched on earlier, low cost, grassroots, branding and marketing for an org or project, managing volunteers and interns, operations, finance, fundraising, grants, and a lot more. So we're really excited for the potential of this toolkit of what it can even inform beyond libraries of things, but of course, being rooted in library of things and the potential of them. So I'm gonna pass it off to Tom now. Yeah.
Hey, it's like you got to get the right screen. So I just put it's in the chat, but we're running a fundraiser right now for that print copy. The goal is to get it out by the end of May, and folks that kick in at least $100 will get a print copy. They're gonna retail for about $40 because they're 250 pages of full color. So they're kind of like a textbook tome. And as this page was messaging, like there's a lot of great stuff in there, no matter what kind of a community project you might be working on. It's just kind of focused around libraries of things. So one of the things I mentioned in the beginning was, we worked with Connect Communities in Houston, Texas, and to start a library of things in their Connect High Star development. And we were able to do that because of a partnership we had with a kind of a larger network of groups called Purpose Built. And Purpose Built is based in Georgia. They started as a kind of a local community development project, and it was so successful that they supported other people to replicate their model across the country, primarily on kind of the East Coast. And They were very excited about what we were doing with Libraries of Things, and they funded us to work with one of their network members, which was this group in Houston, Texas. They are now kind of putting in the initial investment capital to develop a kind of larger training series specifically for community developers. And so they have been kind of supporting us on the front end to develop it. And we're going to be doing two cohorts, one this spring and then another one that's going to launch in September for folks that are specifically working with housing. And we've got a few of the purpose-built network members. We've also are working with New York City public housing, and we're working on doing a pilot basically in one of the public housing units in New York City. New York City has 500,000 public housing residents. So being able to get this pilot making successful and then be able to scale across that is going to be really amazing. So I think Paige is going to drop the link to the two-pager about this housing program that we're doing right now in the chat that she's been showing on the screen. And if anybody is interested, there is a kind of a pricey cost for participation. So we're asking groups to cover about $20,000 to participate in this year-long program. But if you're interested in doing it, we will work with you to get local kind of community foundation funding to be able to go for that. We have a whole template for going after funding for it. For example, the group in New York with public housing, they didn't have the funding. We just worked with them to go after and get local New York City based funding to participate in this cohort. So if that's of interest, and or if you know anybody who's working in housing that you think might be interested, please send them our way. The two-pager that Paige just dropped in has the kind of timeline for the spring, for the May program. We don't have one yet for the timeline for the September program. Just know that there's another cohort that's going to start probably about mid-September. So that's all of what we wanted to talk about Libraries of Things. But wait, there's more. And David, you told me I was not going to keep it to 10 minutes, and doggone it, you were right. We've only got about 5 minutes more we want to share, and then we're going to get to Q&A. Paige, you want to talk about the widget?
Yes. So Shareable has published over, as Tom mentioned earlier, 300 how-to guides, from how to not pay taxes because you don't want to fund the war machine, to how to start a seed lending library, to many other ones. So we are kind of in the process of updating them and publishing new ones, but we have a whole great library of how-to guides that are free and available on shareable.net right now. But we recently completely redid our website, and part of that we wanted to create the how to share widget so that other sites and orgs can host our how-to guides on their website if they want. So this is a little preview of the widget, but this is a mistake. Like, we had to talk to our developers about it, but like sorry, there's like too many tabs open with the screens. But this section will include our toolkits. So these are our 4 toolkits we've published. So that part will be updated, but this is a preview of what it would look like hosted on a website, and it's completely free for anyone to host, but it kind of goes into different sections. Like, I'm blanking on the word, Tom.
Our editorial focuses kind of the different sectors that we focus on as an organization. So built environment being one of those.
Yeah, climate resilience, economy, mostly like solidarity economy, food and wellness, and then people power, which is a lot of mutual aid and organizing focused work. So if you're interested in hosting or putting the how-to widget on your website, we would love to hear from you. I'm going to put this link in the chat, and you can fill out a form to let us know if you're interested, and we'll get back to you. The password is shareable widget, which I'm going to put in the chat right now too. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you if you're interested in hosting our how-to widget, and
yeah. So a couple of years ago, we were challenged by Donnie McLaren from the Post Growth Institute to get our how-to guides off our website and out into the world. And we've all of our content is shareable, the toolkit here, the books we've published, The movies, the audio, everything we've made, we publish under a Creative Commons license to allow anybody to replicate them. And we've been able to gain a global reach as a result of giving our content away. Our content's translated into Italian, into Korean, into Spanish, into German, into Portuguese and down in Brazil. Like it's gone global because we kind of give it away and say, hey, go ahead and use it. Um, but we also wanted to be able to have like this tool that if somebody just wanted to on any page, it just uses um, a super kind of easy embed code, which I think is on the other tab that you've got there.
Yeah, right here.
Oh, it's right there. Yeah, there's the widget code. Basically, you just drop the iframe code into the back end, which we can also help people do if they don't know how to do. And then you can change the size however you want it to fit on the web page that you have, and it can get super skinny and can be a sidebar or can be on the front end. And then what we've done is we've curated kind of our top 40 or so of those 300 guides that we think are the most relevant today. And as we produce new guides, they will automatically push out across the web so that the widget will stay up to date. And anybody that hosts it won't have to do any updates on their own sites. It'll just be evergreen that way. So that's just one of our offerings. And as we mentioned, we could have talked about electric co-ops and more mutual aid stuff, and many of the other things that we're working on. But that's just the 20-minute taster.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom and Paige, for all of that great info. I'd like to open it up to everyone for questions now. I'm just going to remind everyone to share the space very respectfully with each other. Keep your questions concise so we can get as many questions and answers in as possible. So yeah, the floor is the audience's.
Well, I could ask one. Paige, I think you mentioned LLT at one point, and I didn't know if I misheard you.
LOT, yeah, LOT is shorthand for Library of Things.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
yes, I think that was
Yeah,
it.
so yeah, so
Yeah, actually,
LOT, not
yeah, LOT.
LLT.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
LOT. Yep.
That was my question.
It's like IoT. Yeah, thank you. Wow, your website is such an amazing resource. Like, I'm just really impressed with how many how-tos and just how clear it's described. Just wondering if you're going to cities like Santa Cruz and asking, them to spotlight the toolkits, or host the widget on their sites at all, or like, have you
We
like,
have not yet, and again, we're just now. I mean, the widget's not even totally done. As we showed, we had thought that it was set, and then it wasn't actually pulling the toolkits from the top. So we're just starting to take interest in that, and over the next couple of once we get it fixed, as we got to write our developers right after this call. Once we get it fixed, we're going to be sending it out to a handful of groups that want to be kind of pilot websites, so we can make sure that the iframe is working really well. And then our plan is to start rolling that out to their groups. So one of our previous books, which I normally have a copy on my desk, but I am in my living room right now because my house is under self-construction, and is called Sharing Cities, Activating the Urban Commons. And that was one of we worked with 15 fellows in 9 different countries, had submissions from over 25 organizations into that book, and it was a series of model policies and page. Maybe you can grab the link to that.
Yeah, I'm trying to find my copy,
Our,
and it's usually right here, and I can't find it either.
yep. And the book was kind of half city policies and half kind of community-driven initiatives that were both meeting the basic needs around food and housing and waste and energy and finance and technology and governance and water and land and work, kind of these 11 core city sectors. I think I probably dropped one of them along the way there. These 11 core city sectors, and the kind of half that was city policies were all model policies that have been replicated by multiple cities, oftentimes by multiple countries, that anybody could just grab the policy guide and bring that to their city council meeting and say, hey, they're doing this thing in Brazil, or they're doing this thing in Fort Collins, or they're doing this thing over there. Like, we want to try this here. And we set it up so that basically you could print out the 1-page policy guide and hand it to those policymakers. And people did. People went to the community space and like had this like, all right, here's a short-term rental like way to make sure that you're not, getting, adversely affecting the housing stock. And here's like, so we had all these different policies. So we're very much into working with cities. We, as part of that Sharing Cities project that we did for years, at one point in time, there was over 110 official Sharing Cities programs around the world. Starting with San Francisco, then we got Seoul, South Korea involved, and they built their program out so much over the years that we were consulting with them that their mayor won the Gothenburg Sustainable Development Award for their Sharing Cities program, and that led to replication globally. So we're very much into working with cities where there's an option to do that. And Kirsten, if you've got ways to get into the city of Santa Cruz, we should definitely connect after this because I also want to see a library of things come together in Santa Cruz,
I
which
would
there
love
is
that
not
too.
yet.
No, and I think Santa Cruz is a perfect community to be one of the first that you go to if possible, and I'm happy to help. I know the mayor is really open to a lot of new ideas and hearing from the community. So let's definitely talk about that for sure.
Yeah, excellent.
Should I just go for it, Jesse? Okay. Um, so the resources and the breadth of the resources is amazing. But where I could use help, as an example, is that, I live in a 500 unit complex and been trying to, get things going with people. Any thoughts on, is there one project that seems to really bring people out the most? Or, um, my problem is getting people to agree to it.
Yeah.
Like it's not the lack of ideas and so forth. And certainly you have all these things, but how do you go about getting a community interested when there's really only one person interested at the start?
Um, so I'm just making myself a quick note to follow up with you about a specific thing, which we'll talk about in a second. Um, you know, we've worked with people that have been banging their heads against the wall for so many years to try and get this specific project off the ground for this community. And at a certain point, you're like, maybe that time bank is not the place to start, right? Like, what if there's not an initial energy there? So, I always say you got to find at least five people to get behind something to build from there. And the thing that I've seen work over and over again, and Paige, I want to bring you into this next, is starting with food, like starting with sharing food in some way, like having food, bringing people together, having conversations about, wouldn't it be nice if, wouldn't it be cool if we were able to have, what I really miss is the not having X, Y, and Z. What do you think about that, right? And having very low stakes conversations about what would be cool to do and finding some amount of consensus to have energy to build off of that, right? So one of my favorite projects, and I've been doing this for years, and don't let me get distracted telling the story, but are folks on this call familiar with the story of stone soup? Like the old folk tale, the story of stone soup. So it's first put into print in the 1700s in France, but it's an oral tradition that was much older than that. It's known as axe soup in Spain, where my wife is from, nail soup in the Nordic countries, and there's a travelers that's trying to get home after a war, and they're turned away at every village, every turn, and finally they come up with a clever plan, and they tell the next village they come to, don't worry about me, I'm going to go and make some stone soup, and sure enough, like everybody kind of the rumor spreads around the community that there's somebody making stone soup, just making soup, right? And there's a time of great famine, both of food because of this prolonged war, but also a famine of spirit and connection. And so our traveler, starts boiling some water. Fortunately, there's a communal well that they're able to draw their water from, and as the water begins to boil, one by one, everybody in the community shows up to see what's going on, and our traveler pulls out their kind of magic soup stone and make sure that everybody can see the soup stone, and then drops it in the pot. And after a few moments, they taste the soup and they say, this is some good stone soup. But what would be better is some stone soup and cabbage. Well, certain enough, somebody has some cabbage and they never had stone soup with cabbage before. That sounds pretty good. And they get their cabbage and chop, chop, chop into the pot it goes. And what would be even better is stone soup than cabbage is stone soup with cabbage and a little bit of spiced beets. That'd be stone soup that was fit for a queen. And sure enough, somebody had some spiced beets, and one by one, everybody in the whole community ends up bringing something for that soup. And in the end, they're all fed, not just in the food, but also in spirit. And they have this great celebration. And the next day, it's time to send the traveler on their way. They make sure they have a great place to stay. They send with some food to take for the road, and they beg and plead, please leave us that magic soup stone. And traveler says, okay, fine, like I'll leave you this stone, but know that it is magic and that it only works if you all come together to make the soup. And if just one of you, one time tries to make the soup by yourself, not only will it not work, but the magic will be lost forever. And so it goes. The traveler continued on their way home, seeding community, building, doing these stone soups, and the people of that initial village continued to come together around to share and build from there. And my name on Facebook is Stone Soup. I have a stone that I've been traveling around with since 2013, doing soups all over the world. And it's a way of kind of bringing people together around food, but also commenting and sharing and practice. It's rooted in story and connection, and it speaks to a need that, that didn't just exist in olden times, but is very present right now. And so I'm biased, but I like to start with soup. I like to fill people's bellies. I like to, engage people in conversations around that. It's the shared process of making the soup. Everybody's chopping the vegetables together. And I actually personally host a annual camp out that's a stone soup camp out on my property up here in the Santa Cruz Mountains every year for friends and family, basically, to come together and make these big giant stone soups of 70 to 100 people. So that's a very large way to start with food, but also just starting with a potluck, having some sort of a theme to it. This year at the Stone Soup, we're also adding a clothing swap to it, right? And so you can kind of start to build on top of those initial things. You say, okay, we're doing these monthly potlucks or dinners, or maybe it's not a potluck. Maybe someone's just hosting the monthly dinner. So people don't have a barrier to entry to come. They're not expected to bring anything. What they're coming to is for the conversation, for the community, and the food is provided. It's a very low stakes, right? And you can cycle that around. And then from there, you can start adding other things. Be like, hey, this time, like, why don't we do some sort of a swap? Why don't everybody bring 1 to 5 items that they're willing to, that they think are great, but that they don't need anymore, that maybe somebody else might want, right? And then you can kind of see where there's a little bit of energy and kind of go from there.
Awesome.
I
Thank
know,
you, Tom.
yeah. Paige, do you
Yeah.
have anything you want to add? Yeah.
I completely agree, Tom. I think this is something I talk about with like organizer friends and like comrades a lot, is like how to start or where to begin sometimes on projects. But I think one of the longest running kind of projects or I was involved in, we were thinking about how to make coming to meetings like give you energy afterwards and not something be draining. And it was always providing food and having dinner together. And then just kind of letting the conversations go where it's naturally, and like having those like exciting ideas. 'Cause we would have a lot of like you were well fed, everyone was kind of feeling good, and then we would just kind of like build off each other with ideas. And so I think that is something that definitely comes to mind. And like, yeah. And one thing that also had a lot of energy around it was like conflict resolution and like transformative justice and restorative justice conversations. Those were kind of generally applied, and I feel like a really great like foundational things to discuss with groups. And so to create a healthier group, like from then where you're going from there. Because in my experience, conflict has kind of been the downfall of a lot of groups I've been a part of. And so kind of focusing on that has been really helpful and is really, really energizing to like with being in the right relationship and practicing that with other people is to me is extremely energizing, and other folks have told me the same. And I also would say if in your building, like, I don't know if you're like renting or if it's like a co-op or you're owning, but like organizing around the housing issues, I mean, you may be facing, I don't know if your neighbors, like that's something that comes to mind. I've been involved in tenant organizing, And so yeah, that's another thing that came to mind, but I don't know if it's as relevant to you. But
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks, guys. I think do have three hands up that have been up for a few minutes.
Yeah.
James is first on my screen, so I'll invite James to go first.
Thank you. Um, Apologize for being late. Um, this is more a response to David's question. Um, I would suggest a needs assessment. Find out what
Yep.
the 500 people need. That's
Yep.
It sounds somewhat simple, or it could be complex, but yeah, I would conduct a needs assessment. See what they need, what they want.
A great suggestion. John,
Well,
you're
and
next.
I was just saying, and on top of that, so one of the things that we did for a long time, 2013 through 2016, and we still have the guide up for that, is to host map jams, where we would do these kind of community asset mapping, kind of collective community asset mapping. And that could be on a large scale, it'd be citywide, it could be a neighborhood based, and looking at like what are all the assets, like sharing assets that we have. Where's the public library? Where are the farmers markets? How about the financial co-ops, the health clinics? Is there a tool library? Are there digital resources like a time bank or some sort of an exchange network? And then by creating these larger kind of community maps, you could not only see like, oh, like there's this awesome ecosystem. I don't need to replicate this thing. Like this already exists. Like we should just get behind this thing that already has energy and see if we can add on top of it. But it also showed, what are the open niches? Like what are the things that are not being filled? What are some of those needs, right? So it's kind of an asset-based development methodology. ABCD is an organization that really does that well. But using the kind of the map jam, we did it collectively. So that was actually how I got to Shareable. Is that in 2013, I had been meaning for years to do a community asset mapping project and had moved to Asheville the year before. And we were about to kind of do this whole thing on ourselves. And then Shareable was like, we're doing this map jam and here's all these resources. We're like, great. And so we hosted one out of the community house that I lived in Asheville, and we had 25 people show up. The local weekly paper came and covered it. We broke into 5 groups of 5 that each talked about different sectors for an hour, and then came back and presented everything to everybody. And we created using Google Maps, we created a digital map that then we were able to showcase to the public within 3 hours as a community, right? And then we had a form on it that said, hey, what are we missing? Like, please put it here. And we set up the form so that all the cells matched exactly like what we had for the back end of the Google map. So we could easily transfer that data over to the sheet that was connected to the map. All the instructions on how to do that are on our mapping guide, which Paige just dropped in. And I think that actually maybe isn't the right guide. I think we've got an ultimate
Yeah.
guide to hosting. There's
Okay.
there's a more comprehensive one than that.
Fine. No.
So yeah, so that's,
Oh,
but
yes.
yes, doing some sort of a needs assessment that could be a larger mapping, or just starting to talk to folks. I mean, that's the first step we do when we're working with groups to start a library of things, and that's the first thing that that's the first section of the library of things toolkit, is focused on kind of dreaming and scheming, and then doing that needs assessment to be able to kind of test some of your assumptions and find out, is that thing that you want to do actually the most appropriate thing for the community that you're in right now?
Yeah, and I dropped that link to
Yeah.
that chapter. Sorry.
Great.
No, just very, very incredible resources you guys have put together. John, you're next to my screen, and let's stay mindful that Stacy's had her hand up as well.
You bet. Actually, I don't particularly have a question. I'm inspired. I think it's great. Thank you very much for sharing all this stuff, for dedicating yourselves to this kind of thing. Mostly what I wanted to say was, so there's also been a conversation in the chat about Davis, California.
Yep.
I went to grad school at UC Davis and in the community development department. And I just saw that the students in that community development master's degree would be amazing interns for you guys. And so I don't mean to say, here's what you should do, because that's not always so helpful. But it was hard not to say, wow, you guys seem like a great resource for them, and maybe they become a resource for you.
Mhm. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So one of my co-founders of the Asheville Tool Library was focused on waste at UC Davis, and we both just happened to move from California out to North Carolina, and then there were some other locals that were part of it as well. But and I've got another friend that I used to co-lead a project called the Sustainable Living Roadshow, which we traveled around the United States for about 5 years in a caravan of veg oil buses and trucks and stages and domes, and it was a huge, big production. We put on these giant sustainability festivals, up to 25 people on the road for as long as 4 months at a time. It was wild. 2000, the bulk of it was 2008 to 2012. There was kind of smaller versions in the few years prior to that, and so one of the people that came on the road, another Davis connection, was also focused on waste there. And one of the things that he did is that he collected all of his waste for a year in a plexiglass box on wheels that he built, and would take it around to all of his classes and presentations and everything, and to showcase, if you're really conscientious about what you're using, like how much. And this box was, I don't know, maybe 4 feet long and 2 feet wide and 2 feet deep, basically. And he was successful at keeping all of his waste. I forget what the average amount of waste is, but far, far less than that. So definitely have some good friends that have come out of the programs tied to what you're talking about at UC Davis. And I'm going to put my email in the chat. And if you've got suggestions on how to reach out to that program, please let me know.
Okay.
Growing up in Davis is a gift that keeps on giving for me. It comes up in conversation constantly.
I
Stacey,
was
thank you
just
so
thinking
much
about living
for
at 4th and F
yes.
just the other day.
Stacey, thank you so much for your patience. Go ahead.
Problem. Thank you. I've enjoyed hearing all the conversation. So I appreciate hearing about Shareable. I read about it before coming here, but very cool. So many cool things there. So thank you. I have actually two questions. One is I noticed in the how-to guide there's pointers or links to some like software approach to managing this sort of thing. And I'm just curious if you can give any additional information about those different tools that are available and which ones are being used more successfully. And I'm particularly interested in if there are any that are doing peer-to-peer sharing as opposed to sort of centralized thing, because I live in Santa Barbara and real estate is a thing, pretty hard to find the space to store things. And then the other question, kind of completely different, is about the boundaries of what Shareable wants to hold as a commons. Like, can you say where the edges are of what Shareable does, and maybe some examples of what it doesn't do? Or so I'm interested in business, alternative economy stuff, and like how far down into business related things would be appropriate on Shareable versus,
Yeah. Well, first, there's we just had a meeting with these folks last week, and they've been developing this program for a couple of years. They got some investment from, or at least grant from REI to do testing up in Seattle area. It's a platform called Community Gearbox. And it's basically a decentralized library of things where a trusted community could be tied to an organization, a broader network, could be a neighborhood based. And David, I was going to tell you about an example, of something you might want to try with your 500 unit community. You can basically, every community member or every participant in that specific gearbox can put forth as many items that they want, that they're willing to lend with others within that trusted kind of network, right? So it's a network-based thing. If you are interested in they're looking for people to do pilot communities right now with this, to try out the new tech and to kind of work through the now beta version. Last year when we talked to them, they were in alpha. Now they're in beta. If you're interested in and have a community that you think would be a good fit for piloting this, please put your email in the chat. I'll copy it over. And like I said, they just asked us last week and we were just talking about it on our staff meeting like 3 hours ago, about who would be some great suggested groups that we might want to connect to, that might want to pilot this thing that they've asked us to connect them to. So very timely question and opportunity. I'll say that we were a lot more focused on kind of the business size development of things. Um, 2009 through 2017 ish, like as the kind of the rise of the quote unquote sharing economy was happening. And James, well, you just gave me a little bit of vertigo, um, with your screen focus. Um, so we were a lot more focused on kind of business development and in our libraries of things, excuse me, in our sharing cities book, which again, Paige, I think you put the link to that in the chat. We've got a lot of links in this chat. So
I'll put it in.
um, there are some kind of more business development kind of policies and stuff in there. But it's not really the current focus of ours. I mean, definitely like there are groups that are starting libraries of things as businesses. There are many libraries of things have paid staff. And Asheville, North Carolina, like the one that I co-founded, now has a couple of part-time staff that are paid North Carolina or Asheville certified living wage. In addition to a vast volunteer network that are moving that forward. I think they had 100 volunteers participate in the Library of Things last year out of the 18 or so hundred members of the Asheville Tool Library. And it's fully self-sustaining without grant funding, basically through membership fees. So these are mini businesses that people are starting, and there are groups that are starting, more for-profit ones as well. The thing about starting a for-profit library of things is that you are cutting yourself off from getting most grants, which can help to subsidize the programs. But we have how-to guides on how to start a worker co-op and how to transition a standard LLC or general partnership into a worker co-op. We do have some focus around that. It's just not our primary. And was there one more question about specific like suggested platforms for things the beginning of your question? Wasn't sure, you said you were looking at some of the toolkits. I wasn't sure which toolkit you were looking at or how to you were looking at that question was based in.
Yeah, it was the new toolkit that you just said.
The Library of Things. Yeah. So like the backend software that we've worked with forever that I used to start the Asheville Tool Library before I came to Shareable. And then they just happened to be a Shareable sponsor and were actually managed Shareable's website for the first 4 or 5 years that I was there before we transitioned to WordPress, is My Turn. They're a US-based organization. They were founded in Seattle, Washington, as they were by a group of people that were starting a new tool library, and there was not great software for it. And so they built their own. And now it is the most used library of things software in the world. It's used by universities, by governments, and also by kind of independent, smaller libraries of things. They have a very generous cost structure. Essentially give the software for free for the first while, then they charge per user and or item. So if you have a small group that's just starting, it's an easy on-ramp basically as you're building it in a low-cost way, to have that for a back end, and I highly recommend it. I just have been talking. There's folks here in the Valley where I'm at in Santa Cruz, in Boulder Creek. There's a tool library that was started after we had big fires here 5 years ago before I moved to the community, that burned a lot of homes and a lot of people lost their tools. And so they started this kind of rapid response. Companies were donating things, individuals were donating tools, and they have this tool library based out of a shipping container at a city park, and it's managed by the city park, and they're doing everything with Google spreadsheets. You have to call to see if the thing is in stock before you come to pick it up on Saturday. It's a really there's a lot of friction in the system that doesn't need to be there. And so I'm now just starting to encourage them and will hopefully work with them to use My Turn instead and improve their system to be able to reach more people with less effort.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thanks for all this.
James, did you have another question?
Yes. This question is for Stacy. You said business and then you tailed off. In my old ears, I just couldn't hear what the last word was. You said something business, something other.
So I think maybe I said alternative economy. But I'm working on like this collaborative owner operator model and like the legal how you structure that sort of company, and interested in contributing whatever I learned through this process to some common.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Yeah, and if you have a project and you're documenting it, like again, we're always looking
Thank you.
for other how-to content and ways to get it out there. I mean, the majority of our how-tos have been written by practitioners rather than by journalists, and sometimes we'll partner a practitioner with the journalist to be able to kind of frame it and everything. But we're very much practitioner driven, and if there's something that makes sense, then we're happy to share it out.
cool. All right, great to know. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and thanks, James, for prompting that because I did not ask that same question myself, which I wish that I had. So it's a collective effort here, keeping this conversation going and making sure we don't drop any threads.
Thank you.
Awesome. We have about 5 more minutes of Tom and Paige's time if anyone else has questions.
I'll just ask a quick question. You mentioned so many movements and ways to partner with other movements and things that are all aligned. I'm just wondering if how, where you find the most alignment with what you're doing. Is it, you mentioned the solidarity economy. There's also the commons movement or the
Yep.
living commons movement. Are those things that are kind of coming together around what you're doing as well, or totally separate, or where do you see alignment or not?
Paige, you want to take that one? I know you just
Sure.
muted,
I
muted
mean,
yourself, but
yeah. I mean, definitely the solidarity economy, like generally, I would say there's a lot of alignment there. And I feel like there's a lot of energy around like tool libraries and libraries of things, especially that feels like really like exciting in our like partnership with the Tool Library Alliance. But I also feel like on social media in general, folks are just, wanting we get a lot of excitement around people want community, people feel isolated and they want to share and feel connected. And so like we just got a really nice message a couple weeks ago, like I use a how-to guide to do a clothing swap, and like there's just a lot of excitement around it. So I feel like everyday folks like who just want to be more connected are reaching out to us and using um our guides, and even just talking to people like kind of how I was talking about earlier, like when you just are gathered with folks who have pretty common values, but still, a diversity of views, like around food, and you're just kind of talking about ideas. Um, the how-to guides we like have, like they come up naturally. I'm like, oh yeah, actually, yeah, where I work, we have a how-to guide for that. So it kind of like just like sharing things. People want to share with each other and feel connected. So I feel like it has a kind of a broad appeal, and um even I was talking to some friends who just started a new job, and there's like an empty space where they work, and they kind of we were just talking, they were like, maybe we should have like an art library of things. So like I guess it's kind of general for folks, and usually maybe yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of opportunity, but definitely solidarity, like our partners, like folks in the resist and build movement, solidarity economies, the New Economy Coalition. Um, yeah, those, yeah, but Tom, if you want anything there.
yeah, I mean, I also, born and raised as a commoner, and I grew up in the woods behind Oakland, where we had a community of like 200 people or so, where we maintained the roads collectively. We're just an unincorporated part of the county. I refer to it as a semi-autonomous, unintentional community. And we had our own community governance system. There was a handful of water co-ops that most people are a member of, some of which go back to 1906, 1908, right? Like before hippie times, like this is just kind of rural the way it goes. California, I think has, I can't remember, it was 300 or 500, roughly around that many certified water co-ops throughout the state. I think we've got some of the most water co-ops, and like that is a designation basically that are self-managed water utilities. So I grew up as part of one of those, have helped to maintain them. But then as a kid, like I would save my funky shoes every year because I knew that paving day was coming up. And as a 10-year-old, I'm out there with an asphalt rake with the other kids and the adults, and we're there paving that road together. And then I'm riding my bike on that road. I'm hanging out with friends on that road, looking at the stars in the middle of like it became like that road connected. It was a connective artery that we all had a sense of place and connection to, and an understanding of what it took to maintain that road. And if you saw something that started to chip away on the edge, you're like, all right, well, what do you have to do to make sure the water doesn't chip this away? Okay. And so it's commenting in practice. And so I try to think about, how do we, how do I translate my upbringing, on a very micro scale into much larger scales of bigger neighborhoods and communities and cities. And so we've been fortunate now to work, I was saying, with this Seoul, South Korea. We kind of co-initiated and have helped to grow an amazing community center in Monterey, one of the largest suburbs of Paris. And we continue to work internationally with groups as well. And I'm just going to wrap up, Jesse. Last thing is that I am super agnostic to when it comes to definitions, right? Like that's one of the big things about commenting is that there's, over 1 billion people that are gaining their daily sustenance from food, forests, and fisheries. And if you said, "Oh, you're commenting," they would have no idea what you're talking about, right? They're commenting without commenting. Something that David Bollier, who's a great commons documenter, talks a lot about. And so I try to use that for everything. I could say, hey, there's some people that refer to this thing as being the solidarity economy. Years ago, I went to the New Economy conference in Malaga, Spain, and I walked into 5 different workshops: the blue economy, the orange economy, the green economy, the solidarity economy, the sharing economy, the circular economy. There was like 10, 15 different frameworks, and 5 or 6 of them were touting community land trusts, right? And so they're all kind of like, we're going to call this one thing or we're going to call this other thing. Try to be beyond labels and find solidarity where there is solidarity to be found.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. David, do you have something you wanted to toss in there real quick?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'll bring us home then. This is 5 o'clock. So many beautiful themes throughout this session today that tied into themes that connect to all of our other wonderful sessions. And I think that idea of community and connectedness is really the through line. And the beautiful reminder of the Stone Soup story. Thank you so much for that. I would like to remind the group that we are having in 2 weeks, same time, same place, Tuesday at 4 p.m., a discussion on localism that we're definitely going to be, I think, drawing from today's conversation in that. So I invite you all to join us in 2 weeks for that discussion. Otherwise, everybody have a lovely evening. Thank you for being here.
Thanks,
Thank you,
y'all.
Tom and Paige. That
Good
was
night.
awesome.
Thank you. Bye.
Yay.